Welcome in, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, I'd like to talk about Buddhist monasticism, its challenges, its rewards, a little bit about my experience spending 9 years as a Buddhist monk. Some of you new to this YouTube channel or new to me or my podcast might not know that I was a Buddhist monk for a pretty sizable chunk of my life. And so I get this question a lot. A lot of people ask me once they find out I was a monk, they usually ask me, what was it like to be a monk? Because it's something so foreign in our modern culture. And I think also very few of us outside of Asian Buddhist traditions, those of us born in the West but who are practicing Buddhists, so few of us get to experience monasticism in that life. I also find there's a lot of misconceptions about it. There's a lot of like Hollywood ideas of what a Buddhist monk is. And I didn't find too many of those to be true, to be honest. So I thought to share it. And most of you are not monks. Well, probably all of you are not monks or nuns listening to this. So I'd like to also share why does this matter for the average, meditator or Buddhist practitioner who's never going to be a monk or nun in their lifetime. What are some takeaways that can help us? Because obviously now I'm not a monk anymore. I returned my monastic vows in 2017. So the short answer, when I would get asked, what was it like being a monk? The short answer was it was a lot like a long-term relationship, a long-term romantic relationship, in the sense that, any of you who have been in long-term romantic relationships, even though there's another person involved, there's a lot of ebb and flow. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's, challenges to meet within communication, within lifestyle, within finances, all kinds of stuff, right? And so it's kind of a work in progress, I find, in my long-term relationships to partners in my life. And of course, as a monk, I didn't have a partner, but it was like I was married to myself because I took a vow of celibacy. That's one of the vows we pledged to as a Buddhist monastic. And this vow of celibacy was incredibly powerful because, usually as humans, as soon as we say no to something, it's like we see that thing everywhere. And as soon as we put up a boundary, automatically we are challenged by, wanting to break that boundary or struggling with that boundary or whatever it is. So I think, that's kind of what I meant by the Hollywood version of like the peaceful, serene monk. Definitely that was not me, for those of you who also knew me during that time. And I was pretty honest about that. I think the worst is when people kind of fake, who they are in their spiritual practice. And for me, I just really wanted to use it to grow as a Buddhist practitioner. And so what I found initially was that it was a lot like, the relationship to my own thoughts and mind and emotions and desires and all of that just became front and center because I was alone a lot more. And I was in retreat a lot as a Buddhist monastic. So that was another real reward or benefit I got. Not all monks or nuns do that a lot. In Tibetan Buddhism, usually they go to a monastery where they enter a study program, not unlike, a bachelor, graduate, doctorate kind of situation. And so they end up, earning the equivalent of those kinds of degrees and usually beyond within monasteries. And then some will go on to meditate in retreat. My teachers at the time recommended retreat. They said, just go, and so I ended up spending a lot of time alone in isolated, not unlike this, isolated natural situations, which again can bring up this image of like the fantasy of being so peaceful and all that. Actually, for me, it was torture sometimes because I'm just there with my thoughts and my emotions. And it's not like, I put on monastic robes and changed immediately. It took time to change, or understand who I was in the world and also be able to work with the boundaries of monastic vows. Now, celibacy isn't the only boundary. We have a certain amount of precepts depending on if we are a novice monk or a fully ordained monk. I was a novice monk. And so, we have 4 main precepts. But the whole idea here is, and this is really what I want to share, beyond that it really emphasized it made it very like it was really in my face, this sense of, or this relationship to myself and all the things I didn't like about myself and all the ways I struggled with, my thoughts, obviously, but, even sort of low self-confidence, my sexuality, of course. All of that was at play. And I think, what I learned the most is that's how we grow. If we're not rubbing up against our situation, if we're not rubbing up against our habit patterns, our behaviors, our ideas of what we think is right and wrong, we don't grow. So for me, that was probably one of the biggest rewards of just rubbing up against, my own challenging emotions and sort of things I wasn't aware of until I was able to go, obviously, into retreat a little bit more. Meaning, in Buddhist retreat, we spend upwards of 8 or more hours in meditation and sometimes some kinds of prayers and different activities that are related to meditation or study. So it's a lot, that's challenging within itself. And then, I remember when I was a new monk doing that, like I said, there was just a lot of challenging emotions arising, just seeing a lot of myself that was honestly a lot of suffering. Or I could say like painful parts of myself, uncomfortable parts of myself. And normally we don't want to see that, whether we're taking on Buddhist monasticism or not. We don't want to be uncomfortable. And what I've learned through Buddhism over the years is that actually this is where we grow. And so often for me, what separates a more liberative meditation practice from just like a feel-good meditation practice is that the liberative practice ends up, putting us into confrontation with uncomfortable parts of ourself or how we view the world or beliefs or whatever. So rather than taking on new beliefs, it's more about confronting, our judgment, confronting our mind in a compassionate way. And then through those edges, we grow. For me, Buddhist monasticism was just sort of like putting that in, just supercharging that experience. And it was so valuable for me, other than the rewards of getting to, deal with my own mind and habits, because when I took on the boundary of the vows of Buddhist monasticism, then there's this sense, again, where the mind rebels a little bit. And then, I had to work with that. I was also wearing Buddhist monastic robes. If you've seen a picture of the Dalai Lama, that's kind of the color and the style of robes I was wearing from the Tibetan tradition. And, so it was kind of like a walking billboard for Buddhism for many years. So, in very wonderful ways, you get stopped a lot and people are kind of curious, who is this kind of, weird looking American Buddhist monk. And they would ask, really genuine questions from their heart about meditation or about struggles they were going through. So those were really wonderful experiences, but also it was very challenging to, be stared at all the time. It's like, kind of like wearing my Halloween costume like year round, but it's not a costume for me. It's like, it's one of the vows is to wear the robes because it separates a Buddhist monastic in what they're doing with their life from others. Not in a bad way. It just makes a distinction. So others know what you're doing and you're reminded of what you're doing, because it's very easy to slip back into our old habits. So that was a challenge because I didn't have anonymity for, 9 years of my life. And part of me liked that sometimes, but part of me would have loved to put on some jeans and just sort of like blend into a crowd. But again, even though that was a challenge, what I want to really point out in this video, because I hope this is the practical part for all of us, because this still applies to me whether I'm a monk or not, is that it was that challenge, in this case of not having anonymity, that really showed me my mind. And I had to work with that. I had to find ways to not struggle within that, to find even joy within that. So those are kind of some of the more obvious challenges. And then, over 9 years, like I said, it's a long-term relationship with being a monk in this case. And so, a lot of things ebb and flow. I went through periods where there was a lot of confidence in being a monk, a lot of joy, and periods of just, a lot of struggle. And ultimately, as you can tell, I decided to return the vows. That's probably could take up a whole nother video. But I just wanted to share some things here with you. If you want to hear more about it, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't feel too protective of it. Mainly what I wanted to share is some ideas that cross over whether we're a Buddhist monastic or not. Because I think those of you who listen to my podcast and watch my YouTube channel, where you're hopefully consuming this, or listening to it, is this is all about how to grow our meditation practice. This is all about how to, we're not trying to be comfortable. I don't want to advocate that we become uncomfortable through meditation, but, naturally we're going to hit parts of ourself that are uncomfortable. And with meditation, it's like aiming a big lens at our mind. And I really, want to recommend and advise all of you who are listening, lean into that. I mean, gently, not all at once. See if you can reframe that's actually a good thing. And, whether we're a Buddhist monk or nun or not, when we're meditating, when we're adhering to some principles of ethical conduct, or in this case, vows, we also have what are called householder precepts in Buddhism. Those are powerful because those are boundaries and outlines for not only how to lead our life, because I don't think they're about dogma. They're not about rules and sin. They're more about trainings in mindful awareness, because when we're trying to keep a certain ethical principles, for example, not harming others, not killing animals, stepping on them, obviously not harming other people. Sometimes we're going to get angry. We're going to want to, we're getting bitten by a lot of mosquitoes and we're going to want to swat a few. But because we have the vow not to harm them, we're going to think twice. And what this does is it sets up that boundary for our own internal compass to refine against. So I'll say that again. It sets up that internal boundary for our own, or it sets up that boundary for our own internal compass to refine against. I love, anyways, for me, when I'm in that moment, it's uncomfortable, just like I'm sure for a lot of you when I'm refining. But when I'm, just reflecting on it, I love it. It's such a beautiful part of the Dharma. Because when we take it non-dogmatically, and it's not about sin or virtue, that is a play in a sense, because there is cause and effect. So we have to be careful with our actions. But it's a little bit more we understand the practice behind it. We understand the principle of why it's important. Because our mindful awareness and, of course, our loving kindness, compassionate nature begins to grow. And from there, we can grow a healthier relationship to what reality is. We can grow the wisdom nature of mind and be able to cut through our suffering and delusion more. So this all happens because of mindful awareness. So the Buddha knew this. So, he set up principles and vows, whether we're monastics or not, to help us navigate and refine against what's coming up. So I hope that's helpful. If you like this video or podcast, let me know in the comments on YouTube, or feel free to reach out to me at my website at scotttusa.com. Let me know what you think. If you want me to make more like this, you want to hear more about monasticism. If you have specific questions, let me know, because that helps me to also make content you like. So thanks so much for listening or watching. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.